for being here. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So tell me how your motherhood journey started because you've got four little ones at home, right?
I do.
It's crazy.
I know. I say that all the time. I'm like, oh my goodness,
Oh my
how did we get here?
gosh.
Yeah. So I first became pregnant. I was 25 when I had
Oh
my
wow.
first,
Okay.
26 by the time I delivered my first son. Um, and I think, I have a background in special education. I was teaching at the time. So
Mm-hmm.
I came in with a lot of knowledge around child development. Um, and I think I thought I had it all under control, under control. Like I can handle this from like a teaching eye.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I quickly realized, that it's much different when it's your own children.
Yep.
You're not quite able to, I don't know. I guess I just thought I was gonna be able to maybe separate things a little bit more, but when you have emotions and an investment tied in, not that you don't when you're in the classroom, but it is for sure a different experience when it's your own
Yeah.
children. Um, so I don't think anything prepares you for that emotional transformation.
Yeah, I totally get that.
Yeah.
I was a teacher too for a couple of years. I was a music teacher and I thought I was like, "Oh my gosh, like I'm going to love being a mom. Like
Mhm.
it's going to be so easy for me." And it's just like once you have the kid, you're like, "Oh my gosh, you realize how
Yeah.
much you didn't know or how much you didn't expect, I guess."
Yeah. Or even if it's funny because, you know, situations over the years have come up and I just know that if I was a teacher and maybe looking in at it from the outside as a teacher, would I'd give advice or I'd have like, a way in which I would think it could be handled or but then when I'm a mom,
Yeah.
it just doesn't it's not as clear, I
Yeah,
guess.
it doesn't compute as clearly as you
For sure.
expected it to.
Yeah, yeah. So, it was interesting. But I think as I added more children and we grew our family, um, I think I just started noticing how fleeting moments were and,
Mhm.
how important it is to just see them and not just see them, but really live them,
Yeah.
um, alongside them. Because that's another thing too. I think you know, you can be there seeing it, but are you living it and feeling it with them?
Right.
Oh,
It's like the intention behind it and that's so hard to
mhm.
be present and do everything relating to motherhood with intention because then
Yeah.
you feel everything and you accept everything and you kind of surrender to however things are going to be because you can never have full control over what's going to happen when you're taking care of little ones. But adding on four kids running around in the house, you kind of learn that you have to surrender to a lot of things, I would imagine.
Yes.
You learned very quickly.
No, it's funny that you say that. I was just going to say that it's chaotic, but beautiful and all at the same time. I mean, there's always noise, there's always motion.
Mhm.
But you have to learn how to slow down in the middle of it, be present. That's definitely where our photography has fallen in. Um, it gives me the ability to sort of take a moment and slow it
Freeze
down.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. But yes, they've taught me each child as I've added one to the mix, has taught me something new. They've taught me patience and playfulness and, perspective. And it's, I know it sounds cliche because I for sure have heard this term, but now I get it. They
Yeah.
have been my greatest teachers for sure.
Mhm.
This has been, and it's not over, but I can only imagine what's still to come.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
I've learned so much about myself
Mhm.
while being a mom, and my kids have taught me so much about myself that I thought like that I was pretty that I had it pretty figured out before I had kids, that I knew what I wanted to do, I knew who I wanted to be. Um I knew the people I wanted to surround myself with. Um and I also thought that I knew what my weaknesses and my strengths were. And then once I became a mom, it all just got like jumbled up. And I was like,
Absolutely.
wow, I had absolutely no idea who I was. Um, and the discovery of finding myself again through motherhood, um, and everything that's come along with motherhood, our endeavors, um, has taught me that it's so important to take that time to find yourself, to find those pieces of yourself within the chaos.
Yeah.
Um, and that with the mistakes, with the hardships and struggles, there's also like these moments of light
Yeah.
that come through. And it's like, it could be something so small, like Estella right before bed, because it's always right before bed. They say the craziest, most like wise things, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like, Mommy, do you know that you're my favorite person in the world? And I'm like, baby, it's time for bed, but tell me more, like it's like they always say the things that you didn't know you needed
Yeah.
in that day or moment or, whatever, but it's like those things that get me thinking like, wow, I'm somebody's favorite person. And it's amazing to know that everything that I'm doing throughout my day, even when we have terrible days, that I can find those little lights, those little moments throughout the day that kind of like shake me or like snap me back and be like, hey, you're doing great. Or
Yeah.
hey, you're doing okay. Like you're
Yes.
doing all right. So it's like those things that I never really noticed before having a mom. I'm sure I had a lot of those moments in my life, but I never really took a time to like really reflect on them and realize like how much it means to me.
Mhm.
So I love that my kids give me those moments, that they give me that,
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Sure.
tell me how photography came into the picture.
Hmm. It's a very layered background.
Yeah.
So, as I said, I was a special education teacher, so mental health and emotional wellness has always been deep rooted into who I am as a person.
Hmm.
Um, and when after I had my second son, I knew that I wanted to transition out of the classroom, to be home with my children, and we were in a position. We were very fortunate enough to be able to allow for me to do that.
Hmm.
Um, but while I was teaching, um, I had built a little business on the side, and that had kind of started my entrepreneur journey. When I was in the classroom, I noticed that there was a gap between resources that were available to neurotypical children,
Hmm.
um, and neurodivergent children. I found that children who were neurodivergent did not have as much access to the resources that I was looking for. So I started creating them myself. That in turn turned to other people asking for them, and so I became a self-taught graphic design artist, and
Wow.
yeah, it was interesting. So I took a lot of that and I applied it to growing a business, and I ended up taking what I learned from graphic design and I moved into the wedding industry. So
Wow.
it was an interesting transition, but it made sense at the
Yeah.
time. This is around when Etsy was really starting to kind of take off.
Mhm.
And I had done that for a number of years, 7 years.
Wow.
And it was beautiful and it was very successful and I learned so much. But it was missing that emotional connection for me.
Mhm.
Um, and I didn't love the person I had become.
Mhm.
Um, I just, on paper, it was wonderful. But emotionally, I don't know. I was overworked and I was tired and
It wasn't
I
filling your cup in the right ways.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I had turned inward, and I started doing, I taught myself watercolor art and calligraphy. And originally it's funny, I had done it for my own personal reflection, but then it found that it weaved its way back into my business.
Yeah.
And I think you and I have spoken about this before that
Mhm.
you can be talented or good at something, but it doesn't mean that you have to make money off of it.
Right.
So what was supposed to be a creative outlet for me personally, I then ended up turning into another, I kind of merged my business and I rerouted and I ended up,
Naturally.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't, it still wasn't giving me that same fulfillment. And so photography has allowed me the space, I find, to really slow down and connect. And I learned photography throughout this entrepreneurial journey because of course you needed photographs for the visual work that I was doing. And um, that was just sort of it. It just sort of clicked. And I was like, wow, this doesn't feel forced in the least. This is the most um, gratifying work that I think I've ever done.
Wow.
And to be able to provide these moments, this beautiful art for others, it's there's really no way to describe that kind of feeling.
Yeah.
It's beautiful, and
Mhm.
it just allows me to slow down and to be still and to see beauty in a chaotic moment, and to be able to provide that for other moms
Mhm.
is really, really rewarding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's what's that saying? If you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life.
Hmm.
And when you find that, it's just so it's so silly because I I feel the same way where it's like I knew I was artistic. You knew you were artistic and that you wanted to create
Yes.
essentially. And you were dipping your toes in all these
Yes.
different ways and kind of listening to yourself and being, I don't I love this. I love what I'm doing. It's a great platform for me to, do this artistry, but it's not the thing that I want to do as a job.
Yeah.
And it wasn't filling that part of yourself that you just there was just something missing. And that's so amazing that you listen to that part of yourself because a lot of people will be in a job or stay somewhere just because they're really good at something for years and their whole life, and they feel like that is what they're supposed to do. But I felt the same way about my artistry. I started off being a teacher, and I was a gymnastics teacher, a music teacher. I loved music, so I knew I wanted to do something with music. And I loved those years of working with kids and teaching. But then I felt like it wasn't really resonating in the way that I wanted it to. So then I went to school and studied musical theater, and I, decided I wanted to do the art form myself. I wanted to sing and perform, and I very, very quickly figured out that that's not what I wanted to do, that it was starting to kill that spark and that passion that I had for music because it became competitive and it became about, you know, I need a job to make money to survive. And I just did not want music to be that for me. I didn't want it to be me doing it for survival. I wanted to do it for me and because it was my way of being vulnerable and artistic. And so then I got sucked into the whole of you need a job to pay for your bills to survive. And I went and I worked in finance, and that definitely didn't fill me in any way. While it was a great experience, great learning experience, I no. So I just knew that when I became a mom, that I wanted to show my kids that it's okay for them to dip their toes and to experiment and to figure out what it is, because the more that you go and experiment and dip your toes here and there, those are the steps that you need to take to find that end of the light of the tunnel, that thing that is going to fill you up inside, passionately, and it's going to make you feel like you're going to work every day, but you're not going to work, you know?
I do.
Um, it's going to bring so much health to your mental health and
Mhm.
physical health, it's going to fill you up. And I think it's just so crazy that we're expected at 18 years old to go to college and have it figured out. Like, oh, this is what I'm going to do. And then 4 years later, graduate and be like, I'm going out to the world to do this. Like, I don't want that for my kids. I don't want to put that pressure on them. And I think it's so important to give them, to start now, allowing them to experiment with sports and arts and whatever it is that they feel called to do. Um, so when I started all of this with the hidden hues of motherhood, I said, what do I love about singing? I love singing because it's a way of storytelling. It's a way of expressing myself in a way that not a lot of people get to see on a day to day basis. And I said, so what can I use that's similar to that? And so the fact that you found photography as kind of like that passion, that thing that you needed, I want to freeze time. I want to give women the opportunity of freezing these beautiful moments and having them forever. And that's kind of how I found the hidden hues of motherhood. It started off with like, okay, I'm really comfortable in front of a mic. I'm really comfortable in front of a, TV screen or camera. So maybe something like that. Um, Still using my voice, but in a different way. And that's still artistry. And like art is so important. So important. No matter who you are, and there's so many different ways of using art as a vessel to help you heal, to help you um, fill parts of yourself that you can't expect anybody else to fill except yourself. It's therapy. It's therapy.
There's so many points that you made that I'm like, yes, yes. I'm like sitting. Oh my gosh, yes, absolutely. Yeah, I resonate with that very much. And it's funny because I used to feel ashamed and embarrassed about if somebody would say, well, so what do you do? Or how did you get here? I'd be like,
Mhm.
here we go. You know,
Yep.
but I think when you made the point, you said you don't want that for your children. I think, and you said, well, have them start now, trying different sports or activities. I think the important component to also add is it sounds terrible, but I want my children to fail.
Yes.
I want them to
Yes.
feel that. Um, it's just because that's a big part of getting to that. I mean, you're never at the final destination, but
Yeah.
that light, it's what helps to get you, as you said, to that light at the end of the tunnel, to find that thing that fuels you, you to just nurture that growth mindset. And as I said, as a special education teacher, that was a large part of what I had, you know, taught and the environment I wanted to create within the classroom.
Mhm.
And it's funny, and then you mentioned art is therapy, and you know, had I have not gone through all of this, I never would have found therapy myself, which
Mhm.
was such a life-changing experience for me.
Mhm.
Um, and actually had led me to my own ADHD diagnosis,
Oh,
which
wow.
was, which had really was probably the biggest aha moment because
Mhm.
it was almost as if I was on a train. It's the only way I can describe it. If you put yourself on a train and it's as if you're moving through these different stages of your life where you see them passing by like at each stop. And at each stop from when I was so young, I was like, oh my gosh, and that's why that felt that way in that moment. And that's why this felt so difficult. And it just all of a sudden, it was like these pieces that felt like maybe they were connected, but I wasn't quite sure how,
Mhm.
all of a sudden became connected. And I've became a special education teacher because I wanted, I was fortunate that I had a teacher, several, but one in particular who had really made such an impact in my life. And I said, oh my gosh, I want to grow up and do this for other children. Little
Oh
did
my
I know
gosh.
that I also
Oh my
had a
gosh.
neurodivergent brain as well.
Yeah,
I'm,
that's so
so it's interesting yeah, and it's funny because again, with all of the different things that I have tried, oh my gosh, like you can look back and you're like, you know,
yeah,
so it's, but
and
it,
that's happening a lot. I actually know a lot about the subject. Like
mm,
a lot about neurodivergence because my husband's neurodivergent and he didn't really know what it meant until w- he we got married and until I started to do a lot of study on that, and it's a thing. Like there's a lot of adults in our generation who are now finding out that those characteristics and those ways of being has, I guess, an explanation.
mhm.
And it's so, I would imagine it's so such a relief to know that there's a way of understanding that part of you.
Yes, I think that the parts of me that always felt a little bit confusing or shameful,
Mhm.
because I think being somebody who does have ADHD, I think a lot of, the thought around it is, sometimes relationships can almost become like a parent-child dynamic, because
Yeah.
there are parts you're struggling with your executive functioning tasks. So like it's very
Yeah.
difficult for me to be on time. I can, I definitely have time blindness. That is one of my
Oh,
my
yes.
biggest struggles. I don't particularly struggle with organization, but I do know that, others who do. And,
It's
it's
more
things,
common in men. I It's more common in men.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it's, you know, but it sort of like gave me this why, and
Yeah.
allows me to have grace with myself. And even in my marriage, it's, and actually even with my children, I'm very vocal about my diagnosis. And
Yeah.
not that I define myself, I do not define myself by my ADHD, but for sure
Yeah.
it can kind of almost become like, it's actually become like a humor in our home. We're like,
Yeah, same
like,
here.
okay, like, and my 1 7-year-old will even say like, Mom, I have like a visual timer that I use to try to help me, better manage my tasks. And he'll be like, Mom, your your timer is like went off like 3 minutes
Oh
ago.
my
Okay,
gosh.
I know.
It's so
So, I have my
funny.
7-year-old like, hey, Mom. So, but it definitely, I think it reduced a lot of shame.
Yeah.
And without going too specific into the details, it has helped me with my own children,
Mhm.
identifying certain aspects. I mean, of course, also my background, but it's just it's helped a lot. And
Yeah.
when you were saying earlier about photography and being able to capture these beautiful moments, part of it too is, I don't know that we are always, at least for myself, but I think for many moms, I don't always know that we're noticing these beautiful moments as they're happening because they don't always feel
Mm,
beautiful.
that's true.
Um, can recall I actually had just recently done a photo shoot, and it was a newborn session, and there was an older sibling who had gotten very involved in the photo shoot. And as a mom, I can understand how this mother was feeling. You're overtouched, you're overstimulated, you're exhausted, you're tired, and you just want to get the pictures. You just want everyone to cooperate and just want to get the pictures.
True.
And I remember I kept telling her, it's okay, just let her do her thing. Like, just let her do her thing. And, she the daughter was processing her own emotions about
Mhm.
welcoming a new sibling and where she fell into this dynamic of the family. And also, she does, of course, love her new sibling, but there's a lot at play. Um, and in the end, we ended up with the most precious pictures of her totally squishing and all over her little sibling. But
Ah,
looking back at the pictures, once you're removed from the situation, the mother was like, "Oh my gosh, like you so captured her personality." But I think in that moment, it's difficult, and I can 100% attest to that
right.
feeling of in the moment. It can even feel, I'm not speaking specifically about that, but for my own self, like it can feel annoying
Yeah,
or
overwhelming.
overwhelming or
Mhm.
just like you just want space to breathe and to think. And especially somebody who does have ADHD, for me, I do get triggered more easily. Emotional regulation is something that I can struggle with. Um,
Yeah.
and so I found photography helpful in finding that, even when I may not be feeling it myself in the moment. So
Wow.
I think it can be so wonderful to say that we captured the beautiful moments that you'll always want to remember. But I think what is so important and what I'm trying to build my business upon is that you might not feel it right now, and that's so okay. It is so acceptable and okay. But
Like,
my job is to come into the chaos and I will find it and I will document it
oh,
for you.
that's so beautiful.
That's and so it's sort of my entire business. It's why I reference so much about special education, and it's why I talk so much about mental health, because it's so much a part of who I am as a person, my family's dynamic, but also to make space and to normalize and to bring in that conversation that even if you're not neurodivergent yourself, you're sure have it's very important to normalize these feelings, and mental health is not, it's for everyone. It's not
Yeah,
just for certain
right.
individuals. And you don't have to be struggling in order to target your mental health.
Yeah,
Mental health
100%.
is essential, just as is your physical health. So it's just
Mhm.
really important to me that my business connect all of these things, and it's truly the most rewarding job to be able to deliver this art to a family that's like, wow, I didn't feel it then, but like, man, do I feel it now looking back on
Yeah,
that. Like, wow, how fortunate am I that I have, this beautiful family that is so loud and chaotic. And, how fortunate
yeah.
am I that I have, two siblings, who, and, or a child that wants to be so involved, or yeah.
Wow, and you see those especially in the candid video and the candid
Yes.
pictures. That's so beautiful, and that's so hard to capture.
Mhm.
So the fact that you live for those moments
Yeah.
and that you're able to capture those moments to kind of be like, hey, just look at what we created essentially. I was able to freeze that moment for you, and now you get to experience it every time that you look at it. It's just so beautiful. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I do tell families, you know, it, you'll love the shots that are authentic. It's not so much the ones where you're all smiling at the camera. It's going to be those ones that are those in between moments. Um, I shared a picture yesterday. Um, and it was during a shoot, and this little girl had dropped her florals on the ground, and the mother I had was already holding her baby 6 months old in her arms, and she's literally, quite literally, in front of me juggling motherhood. The
Oh my
daughter who was
God.
upset that her florals just fell on the ground, and it again, but she paused and she bent down and she's talking to her daughter, and she's, and they're working together to pick them up, and with the baby in the one arm, and there's some of my favorite shots that I had taken from that session that I'm like, this is it. This is it right here. This tells the story that the picture posed in front of the rock where everyone looking doesn't tell. This
Right.
is what, this is when years from now, not only will you look back, but they'll look back
Yeah.
because I'm gonna cry.
Oh
Um,
my God, that's so
because they'll be
beautiful.
looking for you in the pictures.
Right. Oh my God, that's so
Yeah.
beautiful, Angela. And just seeing the way that even just describing your work and what you do hits you so
Yeah.
hard and it makes you feel because you yourself are a mom. So, who better to capture these moments than a woman who experiences these moments every single day with four little ones? That's so beautiful. And I think that as moms that we're able to find other roles to play that can allow us to feel the same feelings we feel as mothers, but um, separate from our kids is so beautiful because essentially our businesses are our babies. It's
Yeah.
another baby. So the fact that we're there and working on our baby and nurturing it and then it's giving us those little moments that we
Mhm.
get with our kids is just it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful what you do.
Oh,
And
thank
I'm
you.
so, so excited for your business and for the events that we're going to be doing. We're
Yay.
already talking about our amazing event for moms and let's talk a little bit about that, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm very excited about this
I'm
one.
so excited.
Yeah, it's gonna be good.
So, we're in the works of either the second or third Mothering the Soul event that is going to feature you as our beautiful photographer, taking those moments and freezing them for mothers, but in a different twist. You
Yeah.
know, we're doing it more of helping moms find those beautiful moments within themselves, with their bodies, with their souls, with who they are, with their flaws too.
Mhm.
Can we talk about also how I love that you don't edit
Mhm.
the photos?
Mhm.
Like the blemishes, the, you know, the things that you kind of expect a
Mhm.
photographer and an editor to do
Mhm.
that you do not do. And I think that is so beautiful. It's so perfect. Please tell me about that.
Yes. So, I of course will edit to my preference for oh my goodness, the words just went right out. The words just went right out of my head.
Brain fart.
So I of course will edit for to get that final look. I do tend to be a little bit more light and airy, but everything I try to remain very true to color. But in terms of body types, skin colors, wrinkles, blemishes, gray hair, rolls, bends, any of that, teeth whitening, I leave all of that untouched. Because I think in a world that is so curated
Mhm.
all the time, and with the rise, even with the rise of AI,
Oh my
it is
gosh.
so challenging to know what is real, and it feels deeply important to me to honor where we are right now because we are so enough. We are so enough
Mhm.
as we
Yeah.
are. And I am looking for the movement and the bodies and that show signs of stretching and bending and wrinkling and that is the story.
Yeah.
And so when you work with me, I do not touch any of that. Stray little hairs that are, poking out. Yes, naturally. Anything
Yeah.
that's perhaps distracting from the photo, but when it comes to who you are as a person, that's not something that I will do. So you'll never see like intense airbrushing or smoothing of the skin in any of my photos.
I think
Yeah,
that's so important to do that
yeah.
because like you said, in a world where we really don't know, especially when it's behind a screen,
Yes.
we don't know what's real. How do we teach our kids?
Yeah.
How do we teach our kids to love themselves the way that they are, to accept and to move through the flaws and the
Mhm.
uniqueness of their bodies and their
Yes.
personalities um and the way that they think, because that's
Yeah.
also, things that are filtered. It's so important to do that and to show that, and I think it's really beautiful that
Thank you.
do that. It really really
Thank
is
you.
beautiful, because you're striving to bring these real moments
Yes.
and to freeze them. What good would it be to freeze these moments and then essentially mold it into something that it wasn't, you know?
Yeah, and I always like I'm an old soul. And I always think back to, even old photograph. I love, of course, old
Yeah.
photographs. I'm always like going through old photographs and ones of my grandparents or who I was so close with. And never in my life have I looked at a photograph and thought, my grandmother doesn't look so hot here.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think
Right?
that at all. I look back and I feel love. I feel fondness. I feel grief that she's no longer here.
Yeah.
And longing. And there's just such an honesty to those photos that I desperately want to hold on to
Yeah.
in the world that we're living in.
Yeah.
I find it a little frightening, to be honest,
Yeah.
where we're headed. Um, and I just think it's something that I deeply believe in. And even showing up on stories on Instagram, like I will not use filters. You rarely have makeup on. My hair is usually doing its own thing because I just think it's important to show up just who you are and as you are, and to give that, hey, it's okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Show up. Just show up.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I just think it's really important. Um,
I agree, and I'm starting to kind of shed that part of myself.
mhm,
It's mostly it's mostly the way that I was wired to
mhm,
be, not only coming from my Hispanic background where image is everything.
sure,
Um, but also coming from a performing
sure.
background where I was
Mhm.
an actress and I was a singer, and I went to school for 4 years, and I was in those 4 years like grinded that
I'm a
I
dancer,
needed
so
to.
I have a dance background. I
Oh yeah,
understand
you needed
everything
to
you're
always have
saying.
your hair done and your makeup
Understand.
done, and
Yeah,
everything
from
had to
2 years
always.
old.
Right?
Makeup
Oh,
on
yes.
stage,
Yes.
perform. I
Yep.
understand.
I
Yeah.
started dance when I was,
Yep.
my daughter's age, 5 years old.
Yep.
And so,
Yeah.
it's hard. It's hard to
Yeah.
kind of find that confidence without the external
Yeah.
perfectionism that we're, um, taught to have.
Yes.
Um, but just a second, Angela. Sorry.
No
Sorry, just a
problem.
second. It's gonna be distracting. Whatever's here. Okay, turned it off. Um, so now I'm starting to finally like be okay with it, because I'm saying, listen, I'm not performing.
Right.
I'm trying to be myself. I'm trying to show all of the hidden hues of
Mhm.
motherhood, of being a woman, of being a Hispanic, first generation, of being a daughter. And I need to show all of those sides of me
Yeah.
so that I can hopefully instill that in my kids, and then also encourage other women to be okay with not being okay, you know?
Yes.
And so I started this past 2 weeks starting to put on my Instagram, I was sick. And
Yeah.
I was like, people are going to notice that I'm not active on my Instagram, that I'm not happy. So I just went out and said it like, this is what I'm going through. This is what motherhood looks like for me right now in this chapter. And it's okay. And it's
Mhm.
okay because I'm going to go over that side and it's going to be all right. And there are going to be moments where I can't wake up and take a shower or put on makeup. And there's going to be times during my podcast where I don't have time to do that or don't feel like doing it.
Mhm.
But it's okay because I'm starting to find that confidence in myself
That's
in
great.
just being like essentially naked,
Yeah.
metaphorically speaking and physically speaking without
Mhm.
the makeup and stuff. So I love that you have that courage because it does take courage to kind of show yourself in that way.
Well, it's funny because I would feel like I was forced into it, not by choice. My body
Mhm.
forced me into
Yeah.
it. So, around
Motherhood.
yeah, around the
Yeah.
time when my previous business was doing so well, it was during COVID had happened and all of that, and the stress of just all of it. I also just had a newborn, 2 days before the world shut down, and so that whole year, I mean, for everyone, I feel like, of course, this was, but it was just during that time, 2020 to 2021. Really, it extended a little longer for me, but
Wow.
like my body literally got very sick. And I
Mhm.
was showing signs of autoimmune disease, inflammation, and I had the worst hormonal acne. I still battle it today. But it was painful. It wasn't wasn't just the physical, stress, I guess you could say,
Yeah.
of seeing it. It just physically, it was so painful to have. But during that time, I had gone on this journey through therapy, and I had worked with a holistic healer and a nutritionist, and all to really dig into like, hey, what is my body trying to tell me here?
Yeah.
And it was during that time that I had stripped of everything, and I was like, okay, this is like what needs to happen. And never in my life did I think I would leave the house look looking the way that I did, and
Mm.
so imperfect. And as you said, coming from that background of being a performer, and it was very humbling experience. And what I started to realize was I came to this point where I'm like, I am myself, whether I look one way or another. It's up to me how I want to show up.
Exactly.
It's affecting me more than it's affecting someone else that I'm talking. And if somebody who I'm talking to or does have a problem with it, it probably says more about them than it says about me.
Of
Um,
course, of
and
course.
so
More than half of the time, people don't even care.
No, because
Nobody
everybody's thinking
notices,
about
nobody
themselves, because everyone's too busy worrying
exactly,
about that.
exactly,
How they're showing up.
exactly.
Yep,
But
and
the
so it
problem isn't
really
even the other people, it's us. We need to
yeah,
ourselves
absolutely.
find it in ourselves to be okay with being
Imperfect.
imperfect,
Yeah,
imperfect, and that's
yeah,
something it comes from how we grew up too,
yeah.
we, um when I was a kid, I always had my mom was always so like obsessed over making sure that both of her kids were very well dressed and
Mhm.
hair done. And my mom would always say, "You never leave this house looking like those other kids who go to school with their crazy hair and who haven't showered in like 3 days. No, 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 because
Mhm.
you are a reflection of me."
Yeah.
And so for me, it wasn't about me feeling good.
Mhm.
It was never about me looking my best for myself. It was always about other people.
Yes.
It was like for other people. And then
Yeah.
once I started like motherhood, once I started realizing that no matter what, my kids are going to love me.
Mhm.
And my daughter, I can't even tell you how many times she's told me, "Mommy, you're so pretty," or "You look so beautiful." And it's like I'm on my period. I feel like absolute crap. I haven't showered in 3 days.
Yep.
I realize like that's what I've learned from motherhood in the sense of like I need to love myself and give that self-love to myself. And if I do, doll myself up or
Mhm.
look nice, it's not for anybody else. It's
It's for
just for
you.
me. It's for
Yeah.
me to feel good.
Hmm.
Um, and so yeah, it's beautiful. It's exactly that. Like
Yeah.
you said, it's just like nobody cares what you look like, especially when you're a mom and you're juggling a business and three kids. And no, no, nobody
Hmm.
does. It's more of like how you present yourself and your your emotional presence, your inner presence is much more important than how I present myself, you know, physically. So it's a really good point. I don't think I ever put those two and two together that after I became a mom, I started to care less essentially about being perfect and presenting myself physically in a way that everybody's going to accept and love, because I realize now that the people who do love me and who are there for me, they don't care. And like you said, I had a lot of health issues too, where I gained so much weight and lost so much weight. And most of the depression that came from that was my self-esteem, just being like, I don't feel good, I don't look good, I look disgusting, I don't feel sexy. But my husband all the time always thinks like he could care less. I mean, he always has been so loving and so supportive, even in the last 5 years where I've gained 60 pounds, lost 60 pounds, gained 60 pounds, even when I was severely sick during my pregnancies and I felt like a skeleton, like a zombie. And it's just now I realize like the people who care about me care about how I present myself
Hmm.
internally,
Correct.
not outwardly. And those are the people that I also want to attract in my business.
Yeah.
And that's what you're saying too, that it's important to attract those people to your business, because they're just going to validate that more.
Correct. Yeah. And I think it's supportive and it's healing for everyone to create a community that holds those same beliefs and can also hopefully pass that down to the next generation, because they're watching. And that was another eye-opening experience for me too. When I was working with the doctors, I still I still hadn't gotten to that place of healing yet because I was on these elimination diets to try to, then I was like holding on like too closely because I went too far down the other path where
Yeah.
then everything had to be clean and everything had to be holistic and everything had to be, which
Mhm.
is the health world can be a really toxic place,
Mhm.
um, as well. Very judgmental, very toxic, very competitive, it
Oh
and
yeah.
in disguise.
Mhm. Oh
um,
yeah.
for
And it's
sure.
everywhere too, and social
Yep.
media everywhere. It chases
Everywhere.
you.
And you have to be so careful about it. And I remember at the time, my eldest was only 5 years old, and he had said to me, their boys were all eating ice cream one evening, and I wasn't eating it. I hadn't eaten it so long because dairy causes acne and sugar causes acne, and so we don't touch these things. They're like taboos, and I was
Mm.
terrified of food, and
Oh my
and
god.
I remember him saying, like, well, yeah, mommy doesn't eat that because it's bad for you. Like, or mommy doesn't eat this because it's bad for you. And I remember it was like, like, pump the brakes. And I was like, ooh, I don't think I love that my 5 year old just said that
Mhm.
ice cream is bad for him. Like, I don't think I love
Hmm.
that. And when I realized for sure, I was like, wow, this is going to take a lot more work. This is going to take
Mhm.
more reflection because you can't pass on you can't pass this on to them. You have to
Yeah.
deal with what you need to deal with so that that doesn't in turn become something that they need to deal with.
Right.
So yeah, I just hope that as you're saying, you want to attract it's also hoping, that we help them. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody is going to have the things that they struggle with, but
Yeah.
I just hope that we can help them maybe not struggle with the
Yeah,
that we have.
exactly. I mean, that's what I've done the last year. I've realized so many things that I've carried before I became a mom.
Mhm.
You don't realize these things until you become a mom. It's like, wow, I didn't know that I was still carrying this from my childhood, or
Ugh, yeah.
I'll hear my mom's voice in my head and I'll be like, whoa.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
I know my mom did and my dad did everything they could.
Mhm.
Um, but now reflecting back, I'm like, do I want to repeat this in my
Sure.
kids' stories? Is it necessary?
Yeah. Mhm.
Most of the time, the answer is no. It's
Mhm.
not. It's not necessary for them to repeat that and to carry it on just like I did. Um, but it's like you said, it starts with us. Like
For
we have
sure.
to practice what we preach if we don't want our children to grow up with fear of foods or fear of anything. Basically, that's where everything stems from. All of the setbacks I feel like that I had as a child and as a young adult, and then now as a mother, all came from a place of fear.
Mhm.
And I don't want to instill that fear into my kids. I want them to first be able to try things, and like you said, for them to make up their minds about mistakes that they make, because I feel like you said, failures are so important. It's either you make a good decision or you make a decision that, yes, it's failure, but at the end, they're always going to learn something from it. They're always going to learn something. So it's essential for them to go through those moments. But it's so hard as a mom not to like kind of guide them in the right direction. And we may think it's the right direction for them, but they have to be the ones to figure it out. To figure it out.
I think one of the I mean, there's been a couple things that I've learned, but one of the biggest things that I continue to remind myself of, and I try to teach my children, is fear. So fear is inevitable. It's never going to go away, but we have to learn to live alongside it.
Mm,
Don't let it take the driver's seat. It's okay to be fearful. Fearful isn't having fear isn't always necessarily a bad thing. I mean, having fear will prevent us from doing a lot of things that perhaps we
right.
shouldn't do.
Exactly.
But I think it's learning to assess. It's learning, and they only learn how to do that by us giving up control and
Mm-hmm.
allowing them to do it. They have to learn independence and how to assess that. And it all begins with instilling a strong sense of self, as we're, a theme that we continuously keep bringing up here. Having a strong sense of who you are, feeling okay with failure, feeling okay with being, sitting in uncomfortable feelings, allowing them to be uncomfortable, and then moving on.
Yep.
Um, Allowing yourself to feel uncomfortable in the extra weight that you've put on, allowing yourself to feel comfortable with the acne that you have all over your face, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever it might be physically or even internally. Um, it's just allowing yourself to feel it, hold the space, be vulnerable to it, and then make your decision, whatever that may be.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
it's so important to teach them that now,
Yeah.
because if we are overprotective when they're little and they only just start learning this when they're teenagers,
Or our age.
or our age, right? It's like their little mistakes and their problems are so small right now because they're little. So it's easier for them to learn these lessons now, because essentially like their livelihoods aren't really in jeopardy. Like when you're a teenager, if our kids start to experiment with fear, or listen to their, intuition when they're teenagers, and that's when they go and experiment with things that they shouldn't be experimenting with, that could potentially be very harmful to their bodies, to their mental health, to themselves, period. So it's so important to help them, to guide them into learning these lessons now, so that once they become young adults, they'll have a good idea as to how to navigate that fear. And I love that imagery of like having fear be a passenger. Are they going to be sitting next to you, or are they going to take the, the
See.
back seat, or are they going to take the driver's seat, but you're right. That ego, that fear is always going to be there. Um, they just have to learn where they want that fear
Yeah.
to sit.
Yeah. And
I
it's funny
love
because
that.
as you talk about experimenting, it's come up a couple of times in our home where, you know, my boys, we now have a daughter as well, but for a period, we're raising three boys. And without, I think this might, my take on it is I do think in some regards it's easier for a female to have a bit more of a masculine air or personality than it necessarily is for a male in our society to take on a bit more of a feminine role.
Yeah.
And our boys, I try to teach them that, there is no such thing as girl colors or boy colors, or, and
Mhm.
so when you say these problems are small because they're little, it's funny because they're so small to us, and of course they're not
Yeah.
life or death or anything of that.
Right.
But to them it's so big. And I remember my one son had wanted nothing more than to get these pink, sparkly, twinkle toe shoes for
Oh,
for preschool. And I remember my husband having a little bit of a hard time with accepting that I was going to allow our
yeah.
to show up to preschool with these gold and pink, and and of course he's like, no, that's fine. But his fear was, what are others going to
Other
say? What
people
are
gonna
others
say.
going to think? It wasn't from him personally. He worried about how the world would show up for our
Mhm.
son.
Yeah.
And we sat with it and we said, well, I think we're okay with it. I think that even although you don't want anything cruel or uncomfortable to happen to your children, especially at 3 or 4, they're
Yeah.
so fragile, you don't want to ruin that innocence. It's also okay to teach them that, hey, there you might be met with this reaction, but if you're comfortable with it and you feel good about it, then that is what you need to follow and do. And we've handled life that way with our children from when they were, they still are young. But my eldest is 10 now. So he's
Wow.
definitely entering more of that, elder
Preteen.
elementary, start of like preteen years. But we've been handling it since he was little. Our boys will go to school with nail polish, over the years, or,
Yeah.
they've experimented with my makeup for play. And
Yeah.
it's, hey, if it feels okay to you, then that's fine. Because when they do get older and they are in those teen years, that's not the time, as you're saying, to all of a sudden start sharing the message of, well, don't do what others do and be yourself. When if from a
Exactly.
young age, something, as innocent as I want the pink sparkle shoes, you
Right.
don't tell them no then. Allow it to happen.
Exactly.
Allow them to experience what it feels like to be their own person,
Define themselves.
regardless of what
Yeah.
either of them are doing. And
Exactly.
yeah, so it does start with the small problems even then, because the small things are not small to them.
Yeah.
Um, so they
That's
are
so
big.
true.
So, and it just carries. The messaging just carries, and it's consistent messaging across the board. At least that's what we believe in our home.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's how we do it at my house too. And funny enough, the same exact thing happened with my daughter Estella. She like a year or two ago, she was obsessed with superheroes
Hmm.
and loves Spider-Man, and it was
Yeah.
just a whole entire year of Spidey and Friends, and watching all of the Marvel movies, which I am obsessed with, my husband's obsessed with, and the same thing with the Star Wars. Like my husband's a huge Star Wars nerd. So she we went to Target and
Mhm.
I was like, let's get you clothes for school. And um, I remember her just like, we were in the girls section. She was like,
Mhm.
oh, I don't really like that one. Oh, like her attention was somewhere else. And I was like, well, baby, what do you want? Then what do you want to wear? And she goes, that. And it was like all of the Marvel, all of the Spider-Man stuff. I was like, oh,
All
okay.
right. That's what
There was
with.
a little boy there with his mom. He was probably like 8 years old or something. And Estella was like, oh my gosh, I want this. It's got the Hulk on it, and I want this one and this. And I was like, all right, yeah, let's find your size. Yeah. And the little boy looked at her and said something like, these are the boys'
Yeah.
clothes. What are you doing here?
Hmm.
And I was about to interject and say something, but Estella immediately said, well, girls can like superheroes too.
Good for her.
And I was like, oh, proud. I was like, that's right, baby. Yes. And the mom was like, no, no, it's okay. Like, girls are allowed to wear it. And she was like, sorry. I was like, it's okay. It's okay. So, on the car ride home, I was like, listen, Stella, I was really proud of you for saying that to the little boy. And you're totally right. Like,
Hmm.
you can like whatever you like, and you can wear whatever makes you feel comfortable and happy. And, I hope that you can always stand up for yourself like that and
Yeah.
think that way. And if you go to school, and sure enough, she went to school and she got bullied for wearing the
Mhm.
Spider-Man shirts and then she wanted the Spider-Man shoes, so we got her the
Mhm.
Spider-Man shoes and she was bullied at school for it, but it did not it like
Good for
slid
her.
off of her. She was like, I don't care what you think. I love it. I
That's
like the way
great.
I look. And that for me is like, if I die tomorrow, at least I know that I left my kids with that, like knowing that I am able to instill that kind of confidence and self love in them, that they don't care about what society or anybody else says. And I'm still working on that.
Hmm.
But at least I know that I'm taking the right steps to having them learn this now so that when they are older, it's not going to be such a uh, new territory for them, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Ah, that's amazing.
Well, it is. That's a win for sure.
Let's see what I have here. Let's talk about how people can reach out to you and if you have any projects.
Any projects? So you can connect through my website at angelabethstudio.net. I'm also on Instagram at angelabethstudio. And I was going to say my email, but that would be
Yeah,
horrible. Let's start.
yeah. I'll put
Um,
your info at the end of the
yep,
podcast.
perfect. And do I have any new projects that I'm working on? Let's see. Um, well, we have our project that we're hopefully going to kick off in September.
Yeah.
That's going to be a really fun collaboration. Of course, I'm doing the Summer Collaborative, which is a series of storytelling sessions that I'm hosting over the summer at 5 different locations that I really think tell a beautiful story of summer. And I decided for this project, I wanted to partner with other small female-owned businesses to really kind of highlight them and what they do, and really give more of a curated experience
Mhm.
for families. So that's part of the collaborative. And these sessions aren't your typical sessions, I guess you could say. They're really more experiences. So with the
Mhm.
booking, not only do you get special discounted pricing, because I really am looking at it as a portfolio piece. It's a really creative way for me to do some storytelling
Mhm.
in these really beautiful locations. But also anyone who books gets what to do in the area guides to sort of extend
Ooh.
their experience. So, because some of these sessions will be taking place in the Hudson Valley, maybe people aren't quite familiar with what's up in the Hudson Valley. And I love
Mm.
the idea of not just traveling for just your photo session, but then also being able to make it a memorable family day.
Well, that's so
Um, so
cool.
there's little what to do in the area guides, and then for each session there's sort of like activities planned or a theme. So for example, one of them is at the beach. And so
Ooh,
we're doing I have planned that we would do s'mores at the beach. So we'll bring like a portable s'mores, and you can make s'mores with you and your partner if it's a maternity session, or you and your children if it's a whole family involved.
that's so
Um,
cute.
yeah, so there's 5 different sessions. One of them has already been taken. That was the lavender field one, which I'm really excited about.
Wow.
And there's 4 different sessions left. We have a kite flying session in a meadow.
Oh,
There is the s'mores on the beach at sunset. There is picnic in it's like a wildflower garden.
oh my
What
gosh.
else do we have? Oh, we have watering and just sort of like sensory exploration in a greenhouse. That's all
Wow.
of them. And the themes were just sort of supposed to be fun. Like we have by the sea and
Hmm.
into the breeze is the theme
Oh, I
for
love
kite the kite
that.
flying session. Yeah, so I'm really excited about this. So the
Oh,
bookings are open. The information is on my website. And so there's only one of each spot. So once they're gone, they're gone. But that's
wow.
definitely a really fun creative project that I have in the works right now.
I would love to do that
Yeah.
with my
Oh
family.
my
Oh,
gosh, well, we should
please
talk.
send me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we should talk because yeah, so I'm really excited about it. One of the women that I'm partnering with, you would love this. She works with essential oils, but she also does breathwork classes.
Oh my
So that's one of the
gosh, that's
partners that
perfect.
Yep, yep. Another one is a hair accessory company, all handmade hair accessories.
Oh
She
my
has like mommy and me pieces.
god,
Yeah, it's beautiful.
I love that.
Yeah,
Oh
it's
my
a
gosh,
really exciting
well,
project.
definitely send me because I would love to do that. I need some
Yes.
more updated pictures with the little ones, especially because this year they've got pretty big milestone ages. They both turn 2 and 6 in
Oh, those are
August.
fun
So in
ages.
the summer, I always love to do photo shoots with them, just to capture this time.
The kites would be fun for that age. Might be really cute.
Right? The kite? Oh
Yeah,
my gosh, my
go
husband
fly some kite.
loves kites. He
Yeah,
loves it. We tried it a
that would be
year ago
fun.
with Estella and or no, like 2 or 3 years ago. She was still too little, but we did it out on the beach and she loved it and I
Yeah.
think that would be really cool. Oh my gosh, yay!
Yes, yeah. I
I would
try to
love
make
that.
them really like experiences for
Yeah,
families. It's
immersive. I love
yeah,
it.
it's really important to me that it's not just show up for your photos and because
No, it's
then I
real.
yeah, and I know and I want it to be memorable, and that's when the
Yeah.
real authentic moments happen. So that's something that's really exciting. We also had Petal and Portraits in May, which was our fundraising event for the climb, which raises awareness about perinatal mood and anxiety disorders.
Mhm.
It's PSI's largest event that they have annually. They were not affiliated at all with our fundraiser, but we did it
In honor of them.
in honor of them. Yes,
Wow.
and it was so successful. It sold out in less than an hour, and
Wow.
we were
Amazing.
able to open up a second date. So I am shooting a second date for those um, in June on the 20th. So
June
we've raised
20th.
Yes, so we have raised over $600 for them. We were featured in 4 media outlets. We reached over 880,000 homes within the Chelsea
Wow.
area. Yeah,
That's so
that was incredible.
amazing.
So that is something that I'm looking to bring back annually. And then for the holidays, I'm still in the works of how I want to do it, but I think I decided that for my mini sessions, I love this fundraising aspect.
Mhm.
And so in the spring, I will make it an annual event to raise funds for women's mental health. And I think for the holidays, I'm looking to do some type of mini session fundraiser for children.
Oh my
So
gosh, I
I'm in the works.
love that.
Yeah, so I'm in the works right now of figuring that out. So in the fall, that would be my fundraiser event. So for families who are looking for, of course, I know fall is a big time, holiday card photos, things of that nature. And I think it would just be something really special that I'm able to serve families through their photography needs, but then also we can find a way to give back to children in some way, whether it's either, a Toys for
Toys for
Tots or
Tots.
children's mental health. I'm still working out, I actually have a call scheduled next month with a mental health professional, and we're going to kind of like discuss and see if there's a way that, how we can collaborate on that. But
That's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah, yeah. A lot of
Yeah.
really exciting things in the works.
Oh my gosh. And
Yeah.
I will keep everybody updated for sure on our site on Instagram
Thank
and
you.
through the episode. I will put all of those links at the end.
Mhm.
Thank you so much, Angela. This was amazing. I can't wait for all of your events. I want links to all of them. I will be
Yay.
there. And we will let everyone know details for our Mothering the Soul event, which will be later this year.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Bye.
Bye.